So now it's your turn. We get to flip things around and you get to ask me some questions. So what questions do you want to ask me?
Uh, I would say the for the school of for the school of engineering as a whole. I noticed when I okay, this is kind of a serious question, but not really. When I was transferring to the School of Engineering, there weren't a lot. I don't think there was any transfer scholarships. Is there a reason why there's like
No,
for
that's a
transfer
good
students?
question. And I am still learning about the engineering school, so I'm not sure that I know the answer to that one yet. We have definitely discussed scholarships for transfer students, and I think they have done that in the past. So that's something we're looking at. But I honestly don't know what the current status is on that.
Okay. Which other question? I think I didn't come loaded with questions actually. Let me see my notes. Uh, for student involvement in engineering, how are we uh, how are we tackling student involvement and getting students to actually get to, so we have like in-class material where you go to class and you learn. How are we trying to get students to interact out of class with educational material? Like because you can learn all you can in class, but if you once you leave class you just stop learning, there's really not much, there's not much benefit, there's not a lot of
Yeah.
benefit there.
Yeah, I agree. There's two things about UAB that I really like. One is how many of the students do internships. You and I talked about an internship that you
Yeah.
were doing, and then a really cool job you had before. It turns out that about 65% of the students do an internship with a company at some point during their career. In the civil engineering major, it's actually 85%. So I think that's one important answer, is that you get a chance when you do an internship to apply stuff that you're learning in class in real world situations. And I think that that helps you understand what you learned and why it's important more. And then it also is motivating that when you go back after your internship for classes, I think you look at classes differently. You learn different things in your classes and you think about different things while you're taking classes because you saw how that's going to be useful in a job. So the fact that so many students do internships is something I think is great and something that we're going to work on increasing at the engineering school. And the other thing I really like, and this is I think how you and I originally met, is all the student groups. There are so many student organizations that are organized around interests of the majors, right? So American Society of Mechanical Engineers, American Society of Civil Engineers, and you have one that you've started for students who are interested in software design, right, and software development. So I think that's another one where when the students get together to work on things because they're excited about them, that's still learning, but it's very different than maybe what happens in some of the classes. And so the student organizations I think are fantastic, and that's one of the things that we want to continue to promote.
um, Now this is one towards you. What's your favorite thing about UAB? You've been at UAB for about how many months?
4 months
uh,
now. I've been here for
okay,
four
so
months.
what are you enjoying about UAB so far?
The thing I like the most about UAB is the students. So because of COVID, we haven't gotten as many chances to get together in groups with students in person. Um, but I've gotten to meet quite a few people on Zoom calls, and then we've also had days where we give out things in front of the engineering school building, so everyone's wearing their masks and 6 feet apart. But that way, I get a chance to talk to people when they come by. We give out masks and we give out donuts, and people come by to pick up things. And what I love talking to UAB students is that everybody has so many different stories about where they came from, how they got to UAB. It's really really interesting. People have been out working for a while at a different job. They decide they're going to come back to school. People who came like you did from all over the world and ended up in Birmingham, Alabama, going to school at UAB. So to me, that's my favorite thing. I really like our students, and I particularly like the diversity, just all the different people from lots of different places, and coming from different places and headed different places when they're done. It's really been great getting to know the students. That's been my favorite thing for sure.
Yeah. And I know you did biomedical engineering in college. So what was your favorite class? Yeah, like
Yep.
yeah, just
Yeah,
in biomed.
this is going to be a pretty geeky one, but we are engineers, right? So
Yeah.
my favorite class as an undergraduate was this class called tissue biomechanics. And it was the first time, because I ended up being interested in biomechanics and that's what I went to grad school for. And so it was the first class that I had where we really got into some of the hardcore biomechanics and especially some of the math. And the way the class was taught, they used sort of real world research lab problems, and they gave us some pretty hard problems and really pushed us to figure stuff out on our own, figure out how to do things. So a classic problem is if you paint a bunch of markers on something and you stretch it, and then you have to analyze the before and after pictures of the markers to figure out how much it stretched in different directions. The first time you do that, that's a pretty hard problem. And they didn't sort of set it up and say, okay, here's all the math and all you have to do is plug it in. They just gave us the pictures and said, okay, figure it out. And it was really challenging, and it was also really exciting. It felt like doing research. And so that class was the one that really hooked me on biomechanics, and made me decide that that's what I wanted to study in grad school.
That's interesting. That sounds like an interesting problem, actually.
It's a
Like
really interesting
markers
problem. Yep. It's also an interesting computer vision problem, right? Because now people can do that in 2D, they can do it in 3D. There's ways to automatically track the markers. There's a whole sort of industry around doing those kinds of marker-based measurements. It's pretty cool.
That's cool. This one is where before you came to UAB, what were you doing before you started at UAB?
Yep. Before I came here, I was at the University of Virginia. I was a professor in biomedical engineering there. And I ran a center that tried to create new collaborations between engineers, doctors, and nurses. So helping engineers from all different kinds of backgrounds, not just biomedical engineering, find clinical problems to work on and partners to work on them with. And so that's another thing I like about UAB, obviously, is we have a great medical school and other schools like nursing and public health and dentistry. And so there's a lot of good opportunities here for engineers to work on healthcare related problems, collaborating with doctors and nurses. So that's something that reminds me of where I came from, and also reminds me a little bit of biomedical engineering.
That's cool.